So I started to say, so I wanted to say before we get started on the podcast, I wanted to say thank you, Machia. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do though in the first place. Give her a huge thanks for making not just this podcast, but my entire channel work out entirely though. I mean, it's thanks to her that I myself have really grown so much since the time I started doing my channel. Like, say what you will about some of these other users who may have known, like, but Machia was actually the true who admire here that made me realize that I can do something with my channel. And I know some people may think it's on the shell cheesy and stuff like that, but really I couldn't ask for someone better than that though. It's allowed me to expand my horizons with the YouTube community, and as such though, I probably wouldn't have gotten as far if it wasn't for her though. I mean, sure, my videos are not really well made like hers, but I still encourage you guys to watch her channel because if anything, her channel really is one that got me into doing this channel for myself in the first place. And honestly, I'm grateful for that. It's allowed me to realize that I still enjoy what I've seen of her content, and furthermore, thanks for anyways. So Mashia, if you're watching this, this episode is dedicated to you. And I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for your help for this channel to grow so big and so far. So with all that gratefulness out of the way, though, let's talk about the magical girl genre for a sec. When it comes to magical girl shows, I'm pretty sure a lot of people know that there's a lot that have yet to be discovered for some magical girl fans, or in this case, any fan out there who wants to see more girl power. But even with that said, there comes across a time where a lot of the magical girl shows I've talked about so far on my podcast all have one thing in common. All of them have basically been talked about before me. But that's not to say that all of them are going to get the treatment they have, though. It also doesn't help that when the Magical Girls show does seem to have a lot of things going for it as well, though. They usually don't get as much recognition as they deserve. Sure, there are some exceptions out there, but every once in a while, I want to find a Magical Girl show that not everyone has already talked about, or in this case, never been talked about, and such. And as the subject for today, I think you already know what I'm going to say about this in spite of all itself. Melody Pitchy Pitchy Pitch. Mermaid Melody Pitchy Pitchy Pitch is a series that's been hanging over my head for quite some time, though. It started off as a manga written by Michi Hyo Hakute and artwork by Pink Namori, who was known for having this series along with Mama de Lollipop, which is a series I have yet to establish for myself, though. But even with that said, however, the manga itself has lasted quite a long time by all things considered, though. If anything, though, it's actually lasted for 32 chapters, if anything. And despite the series having its expanse, though, I have yet to see what has lied in store, though. From what I gather, though, this was actually during the 2000s, which I'm not gonna lie, the 2000s weren't exactly a great time period for a lot of anime, especially for the shoujo demographic. This looks like something I could have watched as a kid because, well, you know me, I'm a 2000s kid. I'm not a 90s kid like a lot of my generation has to offer, but even with that said, I still think this series would have been so much fun to watch. The only problem with the show, however, is not just for how long it takes, but for some reason, no. I wanted to watch The Hero of Tomorrow when he was getting a Patreon request to watch this year's show. And unfortunately, that's why I have to come in and say, I might as well do this show for myself because otherwise, there's not a lot of people who've talked about it. Yeah, this is definitely a case where I could tell you guys I could have waited a little longer, but that wasn't until 2021. I started watching this series 2 years ago in April of 2022, and even with that said, I'm still not finished with this show. And I know I could have watched more of it over the weekend, but considering that I had a lot of things going for it as is, though, I didn't really have much of a choice but to watch whatever I could for myself. And that's like the least of my problems, though. The most of my problems don't just come from its length, but from a lot of other stuff we'll get to later. The animation for the series was done by Actus or Synergy SP, depending on how you look at Not sure how many people have heard of the name of the studio because I have never heard of this studio name. Even looking at the library on Wikipedia, it doesn't help my case even further because I have never heard of any of their works from their library or then. The only work I'm familiar with is this one, and that's about it. Although I have to confess, though, this was probably one of those shows I had on my radar for quite some time. And I figured that this was during the time I might as well do something for my channel because, well, this was the show that wanted me to do Magical Girl podcast to begin with, though. And I know some of you guys may think that's a bit of a stretch. Well, you probably haven't seen this show yet, but I've never seen anyone else talk about this show entirely. So, yeah, I'm just gonna go in this as much as I can. Without further ado, let's talk about how it's Mermaid Melody, Pitchy Pitchy Pitch, and see where it takes us from here. Our series starts off with Lucia Nanami, a mermaid princess that came from the North Pacific Ocean, and she's really a pink mermaid that goes on shore while she sets out on land to find the boy that saved that she saved from a tsunami wave from 7 years ago. Unfortunately, though, the series itself doesn't take it as much as a foot, though. When it comes right down to it, after being in her human form, along with her mascot penguin friend Hippo, yes, that's his name, who happens to help and stumble upon her. Her here to help her out, though. As such, though, she says that if she otherwise tells her about the mermaid legend, though, she would turn into bubbles and disappear. Though I haven't seen all of this here show, but I'll get back to that later. So I'm not sure if that was supposed to be a metaphor or if it was supposed to be taken quite literal. So I'm not gonna say too much on that. But don't spoil it for me if you have seen the show. At the same time, however, Lucia is not alone here, though. See, instead of just fighting a way to get the boy to like her back, even though it's hard to do so, she also happens to do whatever she can to protect not just her boyfriend from her boyfriend Kaito. Yeah, that's his name. And as such, though, she does whatever she can to help out along the way when it comes to that. What's along the way when it comes right down to its own time, though. Well, the series itself does feel like it's just your ordinary slice of life show with a little bit of mermaid magic in there. It's also a magical girl series. See, these here groups of creatures are known as water demons, and as you can tell, though, the water demons are known to be invading around the sea world, and it's up to Lucia to gather all six of the other mermaids in order to bring back the legendary goddess Aqua Regina back to stop them. To fulfill, and joins along with two other mermaid girls who mermaid princesses who help out along the way while still trying to help out. There's Hanan, the Aqua princess, uh, mermaid princess, and as well as Rena, the green mermaid princess herself, though. And while they turn into yeah, while you may think that they're just going to fight off by having some swim on battle, this is actually where they turn into team idols by using their pearls. See, these pearls go inside their little necklaces in their little shell, and they basically transform into whatever color pearl they turn into. Like Lucia turns into pink pearl voice, uh, Hanan turns into aqua pearl voice, and Rena turns into green pearl voice. Yeah, whatever color pearl voice they have, though, they usually go with the color of their voices. And trust me when I say this, though, this is also another reason why I love Magical Girls so much, because of how colorful it can be in their own way, literally and figuratively, if you know what I'm saying, though. But before we get any further on that, though, I think it's about time I tell you guys something about this show before we get any further. See, this show is still one of those shows I still have yet not to finish. I'm in the 70s range of this year's show, and I'm still not done yet. Granted, I have started watching the series around April 2022, and I stopped watching it again since last year. But even with that said, however, I still have yet to complete the series. You want to know how long this show is? This show is 91 episodes long. And you might think that's a bit of a stretch to say, but keep in mind, I wasn't planning on talking about a long series like this one until I started saying to myself, I want to do something for Magical Girl Month. This wasn't really my fault to begin with, though, but it's not They does have something a little attracted in mind, though. Aside from having the mermaid magic and getting all the other mermaids to get together, this show happens to have one thing I don't like what a lot of shows seem to do a lot of the times. It can be pretty padded. Now, I'm not saying that the show can't run as long as it can, though. For an underrated show, it's quite astonishing for what they know. If anything, I'm kind of glad that they never went to doing this into territory level, though. But the way the show structures itself by having gathered other mermaid princesses while still having a lot of the action, it can be a lot more discombobulated than anything like that. I'm not saying that they can't really do this, though, because despite being an underrated show that I don't hear anyone talk about that much, it's also worth pointing out that I'm surprised it lasted that long. Then again, overrated shows seem to have a short amount of time with their expanse, so I guess it could work either way for some time though. Speaking of that though, let's talk about something I wish this show had. A dub. Yeah, I kind of wish this show had a dub, which to be fair though, this series was gonna have a dub by ABV Films. And if you're anyone like me who watches English dubs of anime, you're probably familiar with the dub library in itself. I can't tell you all of their works because if I did, this video would be longer than it should be though. What I'm gonna tell you is gonna be ludicrous of what's about to come. So if this bothers you in some aspects, I do apologize for that though. But really, I have yet to ask one thing that's been bothering me for quite some time. For how much this show was going to have an English dub, but it's also worth pointing out that it was already dropped after 3 episodes when they were dubbing the series. They were going to have something like some actors like say Lucy Christian to voice this character because, well, I kind of made a mistake in the Princess Tutu route though. She did voice a magical girl there, but she also voiced another magical girl series I want to get into from how filmmaker, and that was pretty tear. I hope I'm pronouncing that right because that's the magical girl show I'm still hoping to watch sometime as well though. I don't know when, but if I do a podcast episode for the Magical Girl podcast, I'll do it eventually. But aside from that though, the reason behind why they didn't do this is really ludicrous. Why they didn't dub this entire series. And you're going to find it pretty ridiculous too. You ready for this? I swear to God, you're not. It's not anything I call spectacular for the reason. The reason why they didn't dub this entire show into English is because they dropped it for him being not, not just not as popular, but also because they believe that it wouldn't do well for a female audience. Okay. I got a few questions for this. What do you mean by it wouldn't do so well for a female audience? Girls need something cool too, and that includes not just magical girl shows, but any series out there that can be dubbed like that. Are you trying to tell me that girls can't have anything cool for themselves? Granted, they do watch, us girls can watch boy stuff though, but I'm just saying our demographic matters too, though, not just the other round. And I hate when people say I'm trying to be a sexist and everything like this, but chances are, though, sometimes it's best to have girls to have something cool for a change too. So if you're anyone like me that's gonna think that I'm gonna should be doing the voice acting, I'm not gonna do that. Mostly because if I did do that, it wouldn't be the kind of video I wanted to do though. But I'm not saying this as in every show is going to get dubbed into English, especially for a Magical Girl show. You'll definitely see that later this Friday. But it's also worth pointing out that they really did whatever they could out of this year's show just to make ends meet and make it like that. Now, I could make the argument that maybe they just didn't have it as popular, but I've seen plenty of other anime where they're not as popular and they still got dubbed into English. But I don't want to say that everyone's gonna watch it in English. Let's be honest. A lot of those weeaboos out there always say that the Japanese is the best language, even though some anime like Yu Yu Hakusho or Full Metal Alchemist, Brotherhood, and the like, and also Kogias have great English dubs out there. Just to name a few examples. And while I'm on the surface matter, though, let's talk about the other thing about this show that I needed to talk about. While this show doesn't really have a lot of things going for it as well, though, it's only worth pointing out that the anime itself didn't really really have much of it to go with on Wikipedia. I usually work on that site to see if the show is any good, but I just have to look up on Google, and yet that still wouldn't help my case any further. I have yet to watch all of the show still, and I'm still nowhere near done. Again, I'm in the 70s range, so I'm not expecting myself to do when it comes to that. But for a show that hasn't done so well for its own good, actually got a lot of merchandise. There have been a lot of CDs, toys, and so many things with the merchandise as well that I'm surprised anyone has bothered to watch the show despite not doing very well for its audience at the time though, especially because usually shows that try to do so well don't really sell as much as they could though. But I don't want to diss this show anyway because if anything, it's probably one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this show in particular. See, I wasn't introduced to this show by Machia, even though she did do a Mermaid month last year about it. But I want to say this as in, I just want to see the show for myself and see what like in store for me. And thankfully, I do get to see more of it. More back on the anime, however, though, more is revealed that we do see other mermaids, such as the purple mermaid, Karen, and I'm not sure how many people are going to think that her name is really spelled to be bitchy, but I will admit this probably took out way ahead of its time, though, because Karen in the series does start off that way, but unlike other Karens, at least she has a reason for why she is this way. See, when the girls were trying to get all the mermaids together, it's revealed that this mermaid it's a group in itself is supposed to reunite with each other just so they can fight off the battles right there, though. And this would be the part where I say that she does join right away, but unfortunately she doesn't. See, the reason why she doesn't join right away is mostly because her older twin sister, Noelle, is one of those mermaids that happen to be trapped somewhere in the ocean, and she really wants her sister to be set free. I will admit she does have moments where she does act a little impulsive, but I can't really be too mad at her because let's be honest, how would you feel if someone you're close to is trapped somewhere where you wish they could find any way to get them out of it, though? And I'd be hit or miss if I didn't mention this, though. But what's really weird to me, though, is that at first glance I thought Karen would be the older twin. But for some reason, when I watched them in their human and mermaid forms, their perspectives in my own eyes always seem to go off at times. I always thought that Karen looked older than Noelle in their human forms, but when they're in their mermaid forms, somehow they're I always think that Noelle looks younger than Karen. I'm not sure why my eyes think that way, but that's irrelevant from that though. But even with, in spite of all that though, I have to say though, their singing voices do help out though, which I'll get to in a sec though. As for the other mermaids, there's Noelle, who happens to be again the older twin member, and she's the Indigo pro voice. Although for some reason in the Japanese, though she always says Indigo. I'm not sure if they pronounced it wrong or they just can't say it right. But even with that said, I still think that's pretty cool though to have an Indigo member because let's be honest, Indigo is an underrated color. I feel so sad for it, and especially there's Coco, the yellow pearl mermaid, and I'm gonna be honest though, I really grew to like her more than I thought I would have though. Yeah, I'm more close to Rena because she's more tomboyish than all, but even with that said, however, I do like Coco for how cheerful she is though. Even though she lost her best friend, Sarah. Sarah is the orange pearl mermaid, but even with that said, I still feel pretty bad for this character. Okay, so what you need to know is that she used to be one of the water demons herself, but she was formed into being a mermaid herself when she turns herself back to normal. In spite of all that, though, Kate Gaito, the full counterpart to Kaito, happens to be really and do so whatever they can, though. And it's here where I have to say that Sarah, even though this is going to count as spoilers, ends up sacrificing herself just to save the mermaids from whatever it is, though. I'm not sure how many people got teary eyed, but despite how dark that was, I still like the route they go with it, though. But some people, especially myself, would think that she would come back after this, but no. She does get a glimpse of it later on, though. I will say that, though. But I'm not sure how this show ended, so maybe they gave a tribute to her there, though, as well. But I can't really muster up of how it is, though. So there you have it, though. But speaking of how the mermaids fight, like I said, they use their singing voices to work it out, though, with some of these things that they have with these microphones. Yeah, whenever they have a pearl in their microphone, they usually have them upgraded by Aqua Regina, who's the one that told Lucia that she must bring all the mermaids to do so. Sadly, though, if this show lasted for 52 episodes, I wouldn't have much of a problem with it. But again, I must stress, 91 episodes is still a lot of episodes to work with. I'm not saying that they can't work as long as they want to, but the problem with that, though, is mostly because I really couldn't muster up for what it is, though. I would tell you about the voice acting, but really, though, the voice acting here is mostly done in Japanese. There have been other dubs, like say Italian and Spanish and French and some other dubs, but I haven't really found them. And what I can tell, it looks like lost media, along with the 3 episodes that have been dubbed into English. So I'm not sure if you can find them anytime sooner or later. But honestly, how sad is it that a show aimed at a female audience can't really watch something like this in that regard? Not just by a female audience, but the fact that they had to drop it because they don't think it would do so well. And honestly, I feel more sad to the fact that this show never really went anywhere with a lot of people, though. I mean, sure, there have been comments where they say they are people who do enjoy it. I mean, I enjoy it for the most part, even if I haven't seen a lot of it. But it's worth pointing out that the second season, oh boy, the second season is where Kaito gets saved by hence Lucia. But unfortunately, though, he has no idea who she is. Though, yeah, it's one of those episodes where those shows go that the amnesia is gonna last longer than it should. You know what? Since those shows, I can at least say the amnesia lasts for say one episode, unless you count the filler episodes from One Piece. But come on, this is just stretching out a bit, though. As for the mermaids themselves, though, there's a lot to be desired when it comes to that, though. Like, there are other characters I could tell you, like, say, Hippo, who happens to be a guardian in Lucia's guide, and as well as a pet penguin. I think he's pretty cute, and if you look this up, you can find Hippo for yourself, though, because, well, my YouTube account doesn't allow me to do footage, unfortunately, so I have to work with what I have, though. She does get angry whenever he barges into the bathroom whenever something like that, but he does turn himself into a human boy at times, as well as the hippocampus. And before you say that's a weird name, this is actually a legendary creature, so I'm not really gonna say to my audience that's really something that's called a myth. This is actually a real character, a real uh, godly creature, if anything to judge by, though. There have been other characters, like, say, Madame Taki, who's usually a fortune teller, and as well as, like, Koro, who happens to work with the girls and such like that. But speaking of the girls, though, you would think that this show would have all the girls just be put together and all that stuff, but no. After Sarah's sacrifice, we only see them go in their own groups, with Lucia with Hanan and Rina, and Coco with Karen and Noelle, the twin sisters, as I mentioned before, though. Oh, and I might as well mention this: the twin sisters are a day apart from each other and live separately. Though I'm sure as hell wondering how they knew each other during their birth, but hey, it might as well come up with something somehow. There have been other characters I wanted to talk about, but if I listed everybody, we'd be here all day, though. This is one of those chances where it's gonna be harder than it should, though. Though there is one character that does appear later on, though, Sieta. Sieta is, well, I'm gonna say this right here and now. I think that she's supposed to be the reincarnation of Sarah, but I wouldn't know because honestly, this show mostly fools around with only for something like, say, what happens like that. Now, you might be thinking they could have a filler list and I could skip all the filler episodes there, but no, there was no filler list for this year's show, which I'm pretty sure it's either because the manga itself wasn't as popular or the anime adaptation was loosely based on it, though. I can't for sure as hell tell you, but I can tell you it is pretty unfortunate I couldn't tell you what the filler list was like, because usually I look up on sites to see how much filler there is to percentage the values. Not just in magical girl shows, but any show out there I try to find. But other than that, though, I really can't muster up nothing though. Mermaid Melody, Pitchy Pitchy Pitch is a fun watch. I wouldn't say I would binge it through the show though, but if you're anyone like me who does like romance and magical girl and all that stuff, I can't really say it's a bad series. It's harmless for the most part, and I still enjoy whatever they had though. I still have yet to see. By the time of this recording, there's been a official new sequel release called Mermaid Melody, Pitchy Pitchy Pitch Aqua since August of 2021. It's still going on though, so maybe this was supposed to be an anniversary of some cases. But again, I feel pretty bad that this show never really got as popular as it did though. Would it be popular nowadays though? Maybe, but really, I'm more perfectly glad that we actually got something like Mermaids for a Magical Girl show. Next time, we're going to look at another Magical Girl show, but hopefully, though, while it's not as long as this show, I hope I don't misrepresent it like Lily Orchard did. But until then, thank you all so much for watching, and if you like this video so much, please give it a like and subscribe for more content, and as always, stay flamingo-tastic, everybody. See you around.